If you're rated under 1500, the number one thing you should do to improve your rating is tactics. In the next 10 minutes, I'll show you 10 of the most important beginner tactics that will improve your game. The first tactic is forks. So, a fork is when you attack two pieces at once, and your opponent has to move one of them, and then you can take the other. So here, black has to move their king, and then you can take the queen. Here's the next example. So you want to go queen to h8, because then you can take the rook, and then it's a fork between the king and the queen here. Okay, and then here's the last example. Here the fork is f4, because it attacks the bishop and the knight at the same time, and it's defended, so black's gonna have to move one of their pieces, and then you can take the other. The second tactic is the pin. So the pin is when you attack one piece and there's another piece behind it, which is valuable, so your opponent can't move the piece in front. So here, the king is very valuable, so black can't move the knight because it would expose the king to the bishop. So that's one example of a pin, and now you can actually take the knight. So here's the next example. Here, the pin is a3 because you're attacking the rook, and black can't move the rook because it would put their king in check, so black has to play a different move. Then you can take the rook, and now you're winning. Here's the last example. Pin is bishop c3. You're attacking the rook, but the rook can't move because there's a queen behind it, so black moves the queen, and then you can take the rook like that. Okay, and then here's one example of how you can exploit a pin. The knight is pinned to the king because of the rook, and so to exploit the pin, what you have to do is you can go f4, because now you're attacking the knight, but black can't move the knight because it would put their king in check, so black has to move something else, and then you can take the knight, and you're winning. Here's the second example of how to exploit the pin. This pawn here is pinned to the king because of the queen, meaning you can take this knight, and black can't do anything because the pawn is pinned. Before I move on to the third tactic, if you want a structured way to master pattern recognition, eliminate your blunders, and skyrocket your rating, check out my 4-week chess transformation program. It's a Notion template that gives you daily checklists, tactical drills, and a rating tracker to push real improvement in 30 minutes a day. The link is in the pinned comment. Now let's move on to the third tactic. The next tactic is the skewer. So the skewer is like kind of the pin, but in reverse. You attack a piece, but instead of there being a more valuable piece behind it, there's a less valuable piece behind it. You attack this valuable piece. Here, black is going to move the queen because they don't want to lose their queen. But behind the queen is the rook, so now you can take the rook, and you're up. Here's the second example. You can skewer the queen like this. If the queen were to move, you could take, and then takes, and you'd be up. So the best move for black is to just give up the queen, then you can take with your bishop. So that's one example. Here's the next example. So this is the third example. Here what you want to do is you want to take the bishop, because that sets up bishop to c6, which is skewering the queen because there's a rook behind it, so queen's going to move, and then you can take the rook. And then here's an example of an absolute skewer. So a relative skewer is when the more valuable piece is a queen or a rook, and an absolute skewer is when it's a king. So in a relative skewer, the best move is to move it, but you don't have to. And an absolute skewer, you have to move it because it's your king. So here's an absolute skewer. You can go bishop d5, and it's an absolute skewer because you're attacking the king. King got to move, then you grab the queen. So here's the second example for an absolute skewer. So you're going to go bishop e5, because then after black takes, you can go queen c3, and then this is an absolute skewer, and you can grab the queen, and you're up. The next tactic is the Greek gift sacrifice. So it's a common tactical theme where one side sacrifices their bishop by capturing the rook pawn of a castle king, blah blah blah. So pretty much your opponent castled the king, and you're going to sacrifice your bishop and then attack with your knight, and then bring your queen out, and then the only way to prevent checkmate is for black to bring out their queen, and then you can take it and you're winning. But you can't just do this every game, because when you bring your knight out, if it's not defended by the bishop, then black is going to take and you'll just be down a bishop and a knight. So make sure that your knight is defended, and then make sure that your queen can come out. Okay, so here's the first challenge. So let's see if this position is good for the Greek gift. So yeah, you can sacrifice your bishop. When you move your knight in, it's going to be defended by the pawn. You can bring your queen out. So yeah, it's good. So you sacrifice your bishop. Black didn't take it. If black took, then you would bring your knight out. Black would go back. Then you would bring your queen out. But black didn't decide to take here, and that's the best move. So I think the best move here is actually to go queen to h5. And then here black is in a really bad position. As you can see, it's checkmate in 5 moves. So black sacrifices their queen to delay the checkmate. So after you take the queen, then you bring your bishop back. It's a revealed attack on the king. Right, the king goes there, and then you can take the knight because it was defending the square, so you had to get rid of that, and then mate. So that's one situation where the Greek gift wins you the game. The next tactic is the discovered attacks. Here, this is a discovered attack because you move your knight and it reveals the attack on the queen, and then it's also attacking the king. So and you can also take the queen and you're winning. Here's the next example. It's pretty much the same thing, just with the king and queen swapping places. You get the queen. Now we're going to go on to some more advanced examples. Here, you can go knight to e4. And at first, it might look like a bad move. Like, you just sacrifice your knight for a pawn. Why would you do that? It reveals an attack on the bishop. You can take the bishop. And then it's also a fork. That was the first tactic. So you sacrifice a knight and you got a pawn, and then now you also got a bishop, and now also because of the fork, you're getting this rook. So it's a big W. It's a great tactic. The next tactic is the X-ray. So what's the X-ray? So X-ray happens when a piece attacks or defends a square through an enemy piece. Here, the rook attacks the king through the rook, and you can go queen e8, and the rook defends the queen through the rook. Now it's checkmate. So here, you go here. The rook defends the knight through the king, right? So if we go back here, it looks like the knight is lost, right? How do you defend it? There's nothing. There's no way to defend it. What this does is it defends it, even though it's not directly seeing it. It defends it through the king. So the king has to move, and you've defended the knight, so that's a big success. And then also if you go here, and then you take the bishop, and then you take the rook, and then you go here, it's checkmate. Okay, here's the next example of an X-ray. So here the best move is to go queen to e8. It's an X-ray because the rook defends the queen through this rook, and after black takes, you can take back, and it's defended by this bishop, so it's checkmate. Okay, then here's the final X-ray example. So here what you want to do is you want to take this rook, because this rook defends your queen through your opponent's queen, through white's queen, and after white takes, you take back here, and then you take here, defended by the bishop, checkmate. So that's the final example of an X-ray. So the next tactic is deflections. So what are deflections? So it says distracting a defender. So let's go and let's look at the first example. So it says the deflection is a tactic that forces the opponent's piece away from defending another piece. Blah blah blah. So here the deflection is bishop h7. You're sacrificing your bishop because you're deflecting the king away from the rook, and now you get the rook and you're winning. So here's the next example of a deflection. This is a pretty easy one. You should be able to figure it out by yourself. So you're gonna move your rook up here, deflects black's rook away from your pawn. Now you can promote. It's also a fork. Going back to the first tactic, you take the rook. Now it's an easy W. Here's a third example. So here, you're gonna sacrifice your queen. So you're gonna go queen g4. Black didn't fall for it, but if black were to fall for it, black would take your queen, and you're deflecting black's queen away from defending this rook. So if black were to take your queen, you could take the rook, and it's checkmate. But black didn't do that. Black just moved their pawn. But now you can take black's queen, since they didn't want to take yours. And you're still winning. And then also, if you go there, it should be mate in a few moves. Yeah, checkmate in 5 moves. So now let's look at overloaded pieces. So it's one defender doing 2 jobs. Here, the pawn is overloaded because it's trying to defend both the bishop and the knight. And you can take advantage of it being overloaded by taking the knight. And if black were to take, you could take the bishop. So pretty much black can't defend both because the pawn is overloaded. Let's go to the next exercise. Okay, here's the next example. So here, the piece that's overloaded is this knight, because it's protecting this square and this square. It's protecting this square from checkmate, and it's protecting this square from you pushing your pawn and forking the rooks. Wow, another fork. Forks are like really common. That's why I taught you forks first. Forks are like the most common tactic ever. The most simple, common tactic. If you don't know forks are cooked. Forks are really useful. So when you push your pawn, pretty much black is completely cooked here. It says +2. I think that's an understatement. Because you're forking the rooks while also threatening checkmate, and black's knight can't defend both of those things. So pretty much black's cooked here. What black can do is go here, and it's actually not as bad because now you can't really take because it would be a discovery attack on the queen. So that makes it a little bit better for black, but black's knight is still overloaded. So okay, now let's move on to the next tactic, back rank checkmate lesson. So you got the little octopus here, and so back rank checkmate is exactly what it sounds like. It's when you checkmate your opponent on the back rank. So if your opponent's castled and they don't push any of their pawns and your rook has an open file, then it can be easy for you or your opponent to slip up and get back rank mated. Here, it's checkmate. So it's an easy example. We'll do one more easy example here. Takes, and then takes, and then takes. Now let's go on to a medium example. Here we can take this rook for free. And so pretty much you just won a rook for free. Black lost a rook, and they can't do anything about it. If they take back, checkmate. So yeah, if they take back, you take checkmate. Let's do one more medium example. Here, what you want to do is you want to sack your queen. If black takes, then it's checkmate. If black doesn't take, you take, it's checkmate. If black moves, you can line your queen up and your rook up on the same file, and then it'll be checkmate. So yeah, see, mate. Okay, now let's go on to some hard examples. So here, this one definitely a little bit more difficult, but you can go here, and our bishop's covering those squares, so white got to move back, and then mate. That one might have been a little bit more difficult to see. And then here's another example. This is actually a little bit trickier. So you sack your queen again, and black's going to take, of course, and then you can go in for the checkmate, and your knight covers this square. Black's going to sacrifice all their pieces to stop the mate, or they're going to resign. Okay, and we'll do one last example. So here what you want to do is you want to go, and this is not checkmate, but black's only move here is to take, and it's back rank mate. And it's a little bit weird because it's on the right side instead of back here. And of course black's going to try to defend, but you can just take this and it's mate. If you actually want to master these tactics instead of just hearing about them, Grab the 4-week chess transformation program linked below. You get a full 4-week training system, daily checklists that eliminate blunders, will help you master your pattern recognition, a rating progress tracker, a tactical library for forks, pins, skewers, discover attacks, deflections, and more. So pretty much everything in here. If you don't want to forget it, you gotta check this out. And a complete blunder prevention checklist to use in every game. It's made for players rated 0 to 1400 who want a practical path for real improvement. If you're serious about leveling up, start today. It's $20. Link in the pinned comment. I'll see you there. Subscribe.